is. Hello.
We can trade if you want.
All right, I'll do Whitney Houston instead. Oh, is that Whitney Houston? That's what? No, but who's saying the? Yeah, no, but the Titanic song. Celine Dion, yeah. I can sing, but I only do Celine Dion or Whitney Houston.
All right. Well, we can start with this is more of a speculative question. But somebody submitted this earlier on in the day and we didn't get to it. But do you guys see any correlation to AI that kind of would tie into some of the things we see in the tribulation?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't know. I really don't have a complex answer to that. I guess the mark of the beast could involve technology in some sense, but I don't see any very clear specifics or application just beyond technology being used. I mean, weaponry, I don't know.
What happens is whenever there's some type of technology or threat or something to be concerned about, Christians turn to the scriptures and start searching to see if they can find some passage that might, they go, this is that. And so sometimes people will point to the mark of the beast. They'll point to the image of the beast, this thing that, this image of the beast that can talk and causes people to, submit to the Antichrist, this type of thing. Just some more obscure passages most often in the book of Revelation. And I would really caution against that. However, to be very clear, like if you just step back from the Bible itself, step back from all biblical prophecy, and just simply, unbelievers, Elon Musk, these type of guys, they're like, this could be the end of humanity. And that's not sensationalism. I mean, that's actually a very realistic thought. And so one of the reasons, because we often say, I have no idea Jesus could return in 5 years or 300 years. One of the reasons why I feel as though very legitimately that we are very much approaching that final period is because of technology in general, of which AI is one of the, sort of the worst. But so if you think about this again, just throughout all of human history, regardless as to how long you think that may be, technology for the most part was like this. And slowly, you have these little rises and, and then you hit the Industrial Revolution and suddenly everything drastically ramped up very, very quickly in a very relatively short amount of time, 150 plus years. And it was a pretty drastic uptick. Well, now since the turn of the 21st century, the rise of technology, but it's not just, over here. It used to be like, well, automobile technology really ramped up, you can start in the 30s, 40s, and this type of thing. Now we're dealing with not just isolated various forms of technology ramping up, we're witnessing them all converging together, amplifying one another. And it's not just this uptick, it's just a straight hockey stick, and it's the convergence of, it used to be, well, silicon microchip technology over here is really advancing rapidly, and communications, but now we have CRISPR gene splicing, we have artificial intelligence, we have Elon Musk's Neuralink, we have all of these various things, and we have it at a moment when people are overwhelmingly giving themselves over, just to amplify this, to the occult and the normalization, the mainstreaming of psychedelic drugs and even wearable technology that can actually mimic very hardcore psychedelic drugs, wavelengths in your brains, and the ability to literally hack the human brain. Like, none of this is fantasy. This is just reality. and the degree to which it's ramping up so quickly, so rapidly. I know that I'm getting off from the question a little bit, but it really is such that it's legitimately hard to imagine where humanity would be in 30 years from now. It's very hard to believe that we can sustain what it means to be a human. And I personally believe, and have believed for quite some time, that the church itself is very quickly hitting a point of sort of, turning a corner, so to speak, where if Jesus doesn't return, it will actually be very difficult for the church to survive. And which is why one of the big reasons, which it's completely separate from the Bible, why I do believe Jesus will return soon. I actually believe that we're soon going to, if we're not careful, destroy what it actually means to be human and to lose free will itself and this sort of thing. So I don't believe that he's going to let it get that far. But to me, I'm very, very concerned about AI. But ultimately, what can we do about it? We can't do anything about it. Most of these things, because you go, oh, we need to stop it for the sake of safety. Well, fine. Some company in China has already done it. So, you know what I'm saying? You've got, China, but, you're so racist. No, I'm just saying. But no, whether it's China or a company or corporation, this is just reality. So you've got whole departments at these universities dedicated to the ethics of technology. And they're like, we need to learn about this technology so that we can implement laws. And it's too late. Some lab over here has already done it. And so the whatever's out of the box, the Pandora's box has been open, can of worms has been open, and I think we've hit the point of no turning back. So go to bed and enjoy that.
Well, on that merry note, moving on to our next question. So just a quick reference to Revelation 20, verses 4 and 5 talks about those that have not received the mark of the beast coming to life and reigning with Christ for 1,000 years, and then the rest of the dead not coming to life until the 1,000 years are ended. So the question pertaining to that verse is, do all Christians reign in the millennium, or only those that are beheaded during the tribulation?
I'd say all of them. There are a lot of verses or multiple verses that talk about Christians reigning with Christ in the millennium. I don't have the exact references, but that's not only for martyrs. And that would include also Old Testament saints like Moses and Elijah, and all Christians through the ages will participate and be there reigning in the millennium. That's my understanding.
Yeah, 100%. The martyrs are just representatives of all faithful believers. Jesus said, I tell you the truth, he's blown away by the faith of the centurion, this Gentile, this Roman centurion. He goes, I'm telling you what, he says, many will come from the east and the west, so he's talking about the Gentiles, and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What table? The feast, the marriage supper in Jerusalem. And so all of the righteous throughout history will be resurrected together with Christians. So it's not just, well, if you really want to rule, you got to get beheaded. Well, what about shot? No, that doesn't count because Revelation says beheaded. That's kind of I've heard people argue that, but it's kind of goofy.
Yeah, just to follow up, it's 2 Timothy 2:12. Paul says, if we suffer with him, we will also reign with him. And there's no qualifier there, like only these people get to reign. He just applies it to believers.
The inference is all believers suffer with him. If we're faithful, there's a degree of suffering. If you're going to carry your cross, there's going to be suffering.
That's good. Thank you for clarifying that. So Travis, you kind of touched on this in our last session here, talking about the Day of Atonement, and then Jesus coming back as a warrior. So the question is, if the Day of Atonement is about purification of a space for God, would Jesus coming down to slaughter his enemies not be a picture of purification?
Yeah, I guess I see the reasoning behind that. I don't I don't personally read it that way myself. For me, just from kind of a methodology standpoint of interpretation, I'm just always looking for where the language of the feast and the broader context of a prophetic passage. So where is the language of the feast used in a prophecy? And then where does the broader context kind of lend itself to what that feast meant historically? So historically, the Day of Atonement didn't really have anything to do with God destroying his enemies. That's just not what it was. It was a purification of sacred space for God to dwell. And when you start looking at the passages, Ezekiel gets into this probably more than anyone. In Ezekiel 36 and 39, they're talking about people who come into the millennium being purified, and then the temple itself. And actually, yeah, Ezekiel, he uses atonement language talking about the temple itself. So that's as far as I would want to go with it. I know there's always going to be different views on these things, but these are the kind of things that keep me up at night, and I just like, I'll wake up at like 3 a.m. and I'll be like, no, it's not that, you know, it's like these things nag at me, so I'm looking for consistency and really where can you make a case with evidence rather than speculate. So the more I've gotten into the feast, the more just, I'm not going to say confident of like Jesus coming back right before Passover, because God can always throw a curveball, but it just makes so much sense historically, prophetically. It's just like, it's all over the place. And it's even there in Judaism to this day. I didn't talk about the Passover Seder in Judaism. So today when you have a Passover meal, there's 3 parts. There's the beginning, and then there's the meal itself, and then there's the third part. And the third part of the Passover Seder today in Judaism, if you really get into it, is about the coming of the Messiah. And they leave a place for Elijah because Elijah is the one who's coming to announce the Messiah. And they open the door for Elijah because Elijah's coming to announce the Messiah. And then they sing this song about Eliyahu HaNavi. He's going to come, and with him is going to come Mashiach ben David, the Messiah, son of David. So this is all in the Jewish Seder. This is all in Jewish liturgy. This whole thing about Passover and the coming of the Messiah. But it's kind of been lost in the Messianic Christian world because, yeah, Jesus is the Passover lamb, so we want to focus on that, you know? And I've had people get upset at me before, like, because they think I'm taking that away from them. And I'm like, I'm not taking away that Jesus is the Passover lamb. Like, celebrate that all you want, but the Passover Seder, it's an anticipation of the Messianic kingdom. It's an anticipation of the Messianic banquet in a way. And so that's just where I see all the evidence pointing in terms of how to look at it. Yeah.
It's good. So we've been talking, in some of the sessions a lot about the millennium and just kind of the age to come. So to clarify, like during the, kind of the millennial kingdom when Jesus is ruling from Jerusalem, are there still going to be people on the earth that are not saved or they're not believing in Christ?
That one's really hard because it's hard to imagine that Jesus could be ruling and reigning and there's still unbelievers. But you clearly do have, after Satan is released at the end of the millennium, you have one final rebellion again. And it calls it Gog and Magog. So there will be rebels, at least at the very end. Now, will there be rebels throughout? It almost seems, I know this sounds weird, but it almost seems like there'll be some unbelief. Like almost like an ideology that then Satan is released and it just catches fire at the end. But I don't know that there's any strong evidence for unbelievers throughout the millennium until you have that final rebellion. I'm not sure. There's so much that the scriptures don't tell us about the millennium. You know, it doesn't give us tremendous amount of details. Does it? In Ezekiel, like 40 through 48, you've got various sacrifices. I mean, there's clearly still sin. Things are still not perfect for those in their natural bodies. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Travis.
I was just going to say, I've kind of thought about it both. The only thing I was thinking of, there are passages that talk about in Zechariah 14, it talks about if this people from these nations won't go up and celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles in the millennium, then there'll be these kind of curses or judgments on them. So that's an interesting one, that it would be, I mean, is God giving like a hypothetical, or is he talking about something that will be there? Maybe. I tend to believe that, like, in the big picture, because of what the millennium represents and the outpouring of the Spirit, I tend to believe that it will be like any kind of sin or rebellion would be so diminished that for me, I wouldn't want to emphasize that, because I want to emphasize what Scripture emphasizes, and continually Scripture emphasizes the millennium as a time of righteousness, where the knowledge of the Lord covers the earth like the waters cover the sea, where all these people are getting saved en masse. And so I don't know about the, like, over in this little corner over here or whatever, because the people who are saved when Jesus comes back, and I do talk about this, I think, in the Feast of Weeks chapter in that book, those people who get saved when Jesus comes back, they will still be mortals like us. You know, they don't get their new bodies like us. We get our new bodies at the first resurrection. So those people will still be in physical bodies that can age and subject to decay. There's verses that talk about the people living a lot longer, but they will not be fully perfected. But they will have the Holy Spirit, most of them, you would think, in ways probably that you don't even see on the earth now. So it's kind of like righteousness in the millennium and the Spirit's work is the emphasis. And there might be a few little pockets where you could maybe say there could be like some sort of where not everyone is all there 100% or fully 100% sanctified. But these things really are a mystery and can only wait and see.
So we have a couple of questions about the feasts. So I know, Travis, you kind of talked about how all of the feasts may have some, kind of partial fulfillment already, but they will have an ultimate fulfillment in the return of the Lord. So a few people were curious about, we talked a little bit about how some of the spring feasts I think people are more familiar with how those are partially fulfilled. But what aspects of some of the fall feasts do you see as having been partially fulfilled in the first coming?
Yeah, so Feast of Trumpets, going back to this whole Sinai thing, the book of Hebrews, it says that we have not come to Mount Sinai, but we've come to the heavenly Mount Zion. So it kind of compares us to Israel at Mount Sinai, that we're these people who have come into the Lord's presence, and we've been called into his presence, and we kind of hear his call, his trumpet, as it were. So that's kind of how I would look at like a partial application. Day of Atonement, obviously, Jesus made atonement for our sins, and he's purified us partially. And Tabernacles, like, God is with us to a degree, obviously now, and we have his presence and we can have his joy, and that's what Tabernacles was all about. But, there's this greater consummation. So yeah, I kind of see them all having historical, partial, kind of messianic application now and then the future.
Thanks for clarifying that. So, sorry, I'm trying to find the next question. You guys have a lot of really good questions. It is hard to cull through them all. These are great. So there's one, so I know earlier, I think, Travis, you talked about replacement theology and just some of the dangers of that. And then Joel, you kind of hit on that as well, and you called it divorce theology, which is really helpful. What do you guys think about kind of quoting or applying scriptures that are specifically for Israel to us personally? So there's some, promises, for instance, like, Jeremiah 29:11, that maybe people might take and apply to themselves personally when the truest application is for Israel.
There's a lot of principles in Scripture that it's okay to apply to us, but it's funny. I always use the example of passages of the Lord setting the prisoners free. And most often, we as Christians tend to look at passages like that in the Old Testament, and we do. We apply it to ourselves and think, yes, Lord, you delivered me from drugs, or, whatever it was that you delivered me from. And we don't even consider the idea that it's literally talking about him setting people free from prisons, camps, when he returns. And that's actually oftentimes the very literal context. Like, oftentimes a lot of these passages that we just apply to ourselves are very literal. But the point is, he still set us free. And there's numerous passages that would validate that principle. And so it's okay when we do that. But we should know the original context first, rather than just take it for ourselves and ignore the original context, which is what we often do. When it comes to Israel, look, the promises given to Israel, Paul makes it very clear in Galatians, we are heirs by faith, because we have the same faith as Abraham, which is in the Lord and his Messiah. We are complete, full, equal heirs. We're not second-class citizens as Gentiles. We inherit all of the spiritual blessings of the Abrahamic and the New Covenant. And there's some debate over this issue. I believe Israel inherits the promised land and Gentiles inherit the world. So as a Lithuanian, Latvian, German, Polish, Portuguese, English, Irish, Tunisian, my particular inheritance, I don't know how that's going to work, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the Gentiles receive the world and Israel inherits the land, but it's not like we inherit some inferior things. So we are full and complete heirs by faith as children of Abraham, by the spiritual children of Abraham, not physical.
That's good. So this isn't necessarily pertaining so much to the end times, but Joel, earlier you kind of made some comments when you were discussing the transfiguration and the glory of God, how sometimes, in our charismania, we can kind of bring New Age things into the church. So we have some questions about, does that risk or practice make you want to worship in a more liturgical style to avoid kind of manifesting, quote unquote, or some of those dangers there?
Well, that's a great question. So, in brief, I have a real affinity and love for liturgical churches. On the other hand, I'm kind of an eschatology guy, and they tend to just be horrible on eschatology, and that would just drive me crazy. I do love, the reverence. I even have a strong affinity for Eastern Orthodoxy. I can't stomach the, Save us, O Theotokos, Mother of God, and there's a lot of things that I can't stomach, but there's a lot of beauty and history there that I appreciate, and appreciate Anglicanism if it's conservative. But I went through a lot of this. Look, as an itinerant minister, I'm blessed. Now, look, I'm mostly in the independent, freewheeling, evangelical, charismatic world. But, 1 week I'll be in a mega church, the next week I'll be in a Messianic congregation. Next week I might be in a Baptist church. Next week I might be in a Bible church. Next 2 weeks I'll be in a Calvary chapel. I don't get invited to, Anglican churches very commonly. High churches aren't, I'm not. But the point is this, there's beauty in, so many expressions of Christianity. And anybody, I think, if you love the Lord, if they're conservative, Bible-believing groups, you can find beauty and so forth there. But in the end, after wrestling through all these things, because I kind of went through a period about 20 years ago where I was really considering converting to Eastern Orthodoxy. because I was so disgusted by the decay within evangelicalism because of the emergent church movement and just the lack of any foundation and anchor, and it was just subjective. It was just kind of like every man for himself. Eventually we'll all have our own individual denominations. I'll be my denomination, you'll be yours, And so because of that, I was really wrestling with that. But in the end, I really resonated with C.S. Lewis's reference. He self-identifies as a mere Christian. And that's how I identify, am I evangelical? Well, I identify with most evangelical theology. But you know what I'm saying? I am very much typical American Christian buffet. I pick and choose what I want, but you could make fun of it that way, but I call myself a mere Christian. And so I identify with the global body of Christ. And anyway, that's a long answer, but I do love liturgy. But if you like liturgy, you can also just go to a Messianic synagogue. It has some beautiful liturgy as well. So that's another way to go if you don't like the... Did you guys know, I don't know if you heard this, but did you guys know the Episcopal Church, because like the Anglican Church is much more conservative, but did you guys know the Episcopalian Church actually forbid their congregation members from competing in chess competitively? Did you hear that? So I know, it's weird. I didn't know this, but apparently Episcopalians are incapable, literally, of recognizing the difference between a bishop and a queen. All right, okay. Denominational humor. I went there, all right. So, moving on.
All righty. So we've talked a lot about supporting Israel, obviously, and just kind of hashing out a little bit of what that looks like. So obviously the tensions, in the world between Islam and Israel, or, Islam and Christianity, are only going to continue to escalate. So there's a question: how do we remain faithful to supporting Israel biblically, but also loving Muslims when there's that tension relationally?
So let's say you have two friends that you love, and they're fighting. How do you deal with that? You love them both, and one of them goes, but I can't be your friend if you're friends with him. Is that on me? It's on the person, you know what I'm saying? So the bottom line is you just do your best to love both parties. But if one of your friends is misbehaving, you don't go, okay, well, then I'll stop liking him so that you'll be my friend. You know what I'm saying? And that's often what happens, quite frankly. I'll be honest with you. So Benny's still here. So in '94, I lived in Israel for most of the year, and I worked down in Eilat, just doing construction, which is a horrible place to do construction. But anyway, it's like 180 degrees every day. But I'll be honest with you. So I've worked in construction a good part of my life, and for lunch, oftentimes, the work sites, the job sites, it's often, a lot of Latinos, Caucasian guys. The Caucasian guys, they go sit out in the truck and they eat their sandwich and listen to Rush Limbaugh or whatever. And then all the Latinos are in the garage sharing food, laughing, playing games. And I was always like, I want to learn Spanish just so I can hang out with these guys. Like, they're way more fun. And in Israel, it's kind of sort of similar, not exactly. But I actually, in a lot of ways, I'm not saying I don't like Israeli culture. It's kind of a beautiful culture, but I often actually kind of connect more with Arab culture. Like, I love hanging out with the Bedouins. They're so fun. And just eating with your hands, ripping the meat right off the goat skull. No, but you know what I mean? I love Arab culture, a lot of aspects of it. But when it comes to religion and ideology, there's just this perpetual thing, but you like the Jews. And oftentimes with Arab culture, including Christians, it's, because again, the pervasiveness of Islamic hatred of the Jew is, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Anyway, look. Yeah, I had a point that made sense. Anyway, sorry. As always, I talk too much. But Look, it's just a tough thing. It's a balancing act. Like you try to love the Arab. Oh, this is it. Look, you talk to the majority of Muslims you talk to, and the reality is they fall in the category of being moderate. They don't want to kill you. They don't want to wage jihad. This type of thing. And everything about them is normal. They just want to raise their kids, and everything's fine until you talk about Israel. And all of a sudden you realize, whoa, this guy who I thought was totally normal, whatever, he is an incredibly hateful, racist dude that actually is calling for genocide. Not all of them, but it's like, you go from like 15, 20% of Muslims are a little bit more radical. But then if you just say, if the definition of radical is you want to kill Jews, then all of a sudden it goes up to like, 80%. You're like, whoa, and so it's a ever-present reality when you're trying to navigate both sides. It's a very, very, and now, again, you get radicals on both sides, but it's the hatred of the other is far more pervasive on one side. It really is. Now, after October 7th, I think things are the atmosphere is changing. Like the atmosphere in Israel, again, I'm not Israeli, but it's just, I do go a lot and talk, is like, everybody's just like, look, we want the best for the Palestinians. We don't want, this little kid wasn't born a little monster, and, we want them to have good life and everything. After October 7th, I might be wrong, but it feels like the people are just like forgive my language, but just like, screw them. You know what I mean? Like, there's just, what in the world? Like, there's just kind of this attitude of like, okay, this is enough. And so the tensions are increasing, and it's gonna get harder and harder is the point. As whenever the bloodshed starts happening, it gets harder and harder. And when you're the individual caught in the middle, it requires a lot of patience and emotional intelligence.
So another feast question. So the question is, in Luke 22:16, was the Last Supper a Passover Seder? And if so, how could John's timeline of Jesus' crucifixion work concurrent with the slaughtering of the lambs?
Wow, I love you guys. We're doing this in a Q&A. Reconciling the synoptics and Luke and Matthew and John. Okay, so the simplest, I have read quite a bit on this. Because I don't know what it is. Every year around, or right before Good Friday and Easter, I always feel this urge to like debunk the idea that Jesus wasn't crucified on a Friday, because Jesus was crucified on a Friday. You can totally prove it from so many angles. But there's people out there who are sure he was crucified on a Wednesday or Thursday, but it just doesn't work. So I have thought a lot about the whole chronology and timeline and how it all lines up. So the best way, let me think about how to say it simply without like diagrams and charts and stuff. So Jesus is crucified on Passover when the Passover lambs, the final Passover lamb sacrifices were being slaughtered. That is the 14th of the first biblical month, Aviv or Nisan it's called. So he's crucified when the Passover lambs are slaughtered. And what happened in the first century is different Jews, for different reasons, and the reasons are debated, would celebrate Passover maybe at slightly different times, meaning like they would have their meal at a different time. So there's some evidence that some of them were having it like a night early, like Jesus and his disciples did. So they're actually like eating Passover before some of the other Jews had fully made their sacrifices. And that could be like practical reasons. That could be just from memory without like all my sources. That could be debates over calendar issues among different Jewish groups. There's a lot of different Jewish groups who by no means agreed on everything. So John is using, when he talks about Passover, he's kind of using the vantage point of the religious leaders, and that's why they didn't want to. They were getting ready for their Passover Seder because they were sacrificing their lambs and getting ready for their Seder. So they wanted all this done like chuk-chak, as they say in Israel, and like they wanted it over, and they wanted Jesus off the cross, and like because they were about to celebrate their Passover meal, Seder, on Friday, right after Jesus was crucified, even though him and the disciples did that on technically like Thursday night. Was that the question? How was Jesus crucified on Passover, but in the Gospel of, and eat a Passover meal, but then in the Gospel of John, it's still like
Yes.
Passover? Yeah, it's a sticky issue, but it can be reconciled if you're okay with the idea that there was like a little bit of leniency over when they were bringing their lambs, and like different Jews. And remember, there were like hundreds of thousands, if not more, people going there. So just logistically, like each family had to take their lamb to the temple and have it sacrificed and then take it back, and they would burn it in a big oven. There was a lot of logistics too. So Passover kind of got, when you could bring your lamb and when you have your meal, like kind of got stretched a little bit. That's what it seems like based on my best available, the best available evidence and my best guess.
Oh, that makes sense. That's interesting. Thank you. So we haven't, I know, Travis, you talked a little bit about the cleansing of the temple and the Day of Atonement, but we haven't really touched on the third temple a whole lot yet. But do you guys have any thoughts regarding red heifers and, their connection to reestablishing the temple? Or I'll add a second question onto that. Should Christians support the rebuilding of the third temple?
So I was doing a Bible study at a Messianic congregation in Dallas back in 2021, right after I published, or maybe somewhere around there, the 70 Weeks book. And this lady comes up to me, prophecy people, like you never know. And she's like, we have the red heifers. She's like, we have them here in Texas. Like, we got them. And I was just like thinking, oh boy, here we go. So it turns out she was actually one of the people who was part with these farmers and knows all these rabbis, and was actually like part of the team that raised the red heifers in Texas that were just sent over to Israel. And I think it's going to happen. I think based on my reading of all the prophecies, there has to be another temple of some kind operating, and you have to have a red heifer for that to happen. What's that? Oh, you have one? Oh, she does? Oh.
Potluck tomorrow.
Yeah, that'll be next year's barbecue. Yup.
There's actually a red heifer steakhouse in Jerusalem, which is, is pretty cute.
But I was just saying, I mean, it is inevitable. It will happen. But when you say support it, like, what do you mean? I mean, for me, like, some Christians, like this woman, they feel like we need to move things along here and start raising these red heifers. I don't know. It's going to happen one way or another. So it's not like it's something I'm spending a lot of time, worried about. But it is inevitable. So I don't see. So if you mean by support, you mean like, no, try to stop it. Like, no, there's going to be another temple. It's going to happen.
I think
so.
The question of supporting isn't so much, should we try to stop it? But, like if you look at the Old Testament, the Israelites that kind of came and rebuilt the wall sort of a thing, they're remembered in a very positive light. But we understand that the third temple is going to have some very negative things happen in it. So kind of in light of that, financially or just, otherwise, like how do you view supporting or not supporting it?
So here's what I'll say is the Bible describes the temple as the third temple, as the temple of God. it says the Antichrist will set up the abomination that causes desolation, and he will defile the temple. You can't defile something that's unholy. It has to be holy in the first place. So there was a video put out, I think just a few days ago, by Jeff, what's his name? Jeff, the guy down in Tempe, Arizona, Jeff Durbin, sorry. So he's a reform guy, he's a post-millennialist, preterist and all that. And he says, if the temple was rebuilt, it would be an absolute affront, blasphemy to Jesus. It would be an affront to his finished sacrifice. So you'll hear this type of statement regularly. It demonstrates Christian ignorance concerning temple sacrifices. Jesus' sacrifice was atoning. There's no atoning sacrifices in the temple. There's all sorts of different sacrifices, and they're for all sorts of things. It's overwhelmingly for temple ritual purity and so forth. And it is very clear that it will be rebuilt, that it's considered holy, and it will be defiled. It will be desecrated by the Antichrist. So there's this very popular, I don't know what he is, like a right-wing commentator, calls himself a Christian. There's a lot of these emerging, Jake Shields. And I mean, he's just the most anti-Semitic. And he, with the red heifer thing, there was this bogus thing that was all over the internet saying they're about to sacrifice it. And he posted a picture of this altar that they're about to sacrifice the red heifers because they're going to, build the temple. And here's this so-called Christian with like, I don't know, like 1 million followers or something, really influential. And he's like, these bastards, these SOBs are about to usher in the Antichrist, And it's like, I mean, just the Jew hatred, as Travis said, it's coming from the left and the right. It's coming from like every direction. And if we think things are controversial now, wait until the temple is built. If you think there's discussion and debate in the church right now over issues like Torah observance, etc., wait until the temple is going to be rebuilt. It's going to be chaos. And my position is that it will be holy. It will be. I'm not saying it'll probably, my guess is there'll be a lot of kumbaya, kind of stuff attached to it. Like this is a place where, but the reality is God does call it his temple. And look, Paul, and I think it's Acts 21, verse 24, is it 24, 21? 21 verse 24, goes into the temple and makes sacrifices and participates in the temple decades after the cross. So Paul didn't consider the sacrifices blasphemous, and it's funny. I mean, it's like when you watch these reform guys try to explain, they're like, well, Paul was just faking it to try to impress the Jews and this and that, and it's like, no, Paul was not faking anything. He still viewed the temple as holy, and then, it was destroyed. So anyway, it's going to be a massively controversial issue. Let's just put it that way. But let me tell a quick story, because this is a good one. Since you guys stayed around, you get to hear this great story. So I was at a conference in Colorado last year, toward the end of last year. Bunch of Israel guys, Kalev Myers, and a bunch of people well known in Israel, and Stephen Corey. He's probably like the most well-known Arab pastor in Israel, and great guy. He's got a church in Bethlehem, and he's a good guy. His theology is solid and everything. And so we go back to the hotel afterwards, the speakers, and they're kind of a bunch of people in the lobby talking, and sit down and kind of just getting to know people. And then, the speakers are telling stories, and you know how it is. And one person tells a story, and then the next one goes, oh yeah, you want to hear something? And he goes, Stephen goes, you want to hear the craziest story? And we're like, of course. And he goes, January of 2020. He goes, this is real. He goes, it sounds like, before I even tell it, he goes, it sounds like just Christian apocalypse fantasy. He goes, this really happened. January 2020, some woman that I was supposed to know called him up and said, can you come down to the Davidson Center, which is the archaeological park right at the southern steps of the Temple Mount, and it's how you access so many of the tunnels that go under the temple. There's a whole world under there. And he goes, so I was like, sure. So I came down, and they bring me into the tunnels. And he goes, as soon as I go in, I'm walking, and I see the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem right now. Do you know his name? It's like Sheikh something Al-Baya. I don't know. Anyway. And he goes, there's the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. And I'm like, Salam, Sheikh. And anyway, they called him down to this meeting because he's like the best English, Hebrew, and Arab translator, fluent in all three. And he goes, and I'm going down, he goes, and I see the Grand Mufti, like the highest ranking Muslim authority in Israel. And then he goes, and then I see like a couple of the imams of Al-Aqsa. And these are like some big wigs. And then I'm seeing like all these like, really well-known rabbis. He's going, what in the world is this? And he goes, we go into this room. It's this big room. It's like solid rock. But despite that, the whole room is like glass. And he goes, it was not a big room. And he goes, the entire meeting, and I was translating, he said the entire meeting was, they were all talking, saying it's time to rebuild the temple. And I was like, oh, come on. Like, the Muslims are not interested. He goes, I'm telling you, I go, but there's more to it. He goes, well, there is. And he said there was this person there, and they thanked him, who, we won't say the family, very wealthy Jewish family that already had $100 million in escrow to dedicate for the revitalization of East Jerusalem, Arab Jerusalem, if they agree, and he also has $100 million in escrow to begin the project of rebuilding. And he goes, so that was, 3.5 years ago when he told the story. He goes, so they were saying it's time for the cycle of violence to come to a stop, and they believe the temple, blah, blah, blah. So the point is this, like, the reality is, those were not a bunch of Christian apocalyptic folks obsessed, drooling over the book of Revelation from Texas going, we're going to make it happen. These are the leading Jewish leaders and Muslim leaders in Israel actually talking about this. And so I was just like, really? He's like, it was there, it happened. And they thanked this guy, and he left, and blah, blah, blah. So my guess is, obviously that was 4 years ago. Now there's the war and things are, but it'll come back around. And when the time comes, we will witness it, probably many of us in our lifetimes. It's not something we should be shocked by.
Thank you for that little added bonus content.
That's a pretty wild.
All right, well, we are a little past time here, so I want to honor everyone's time. Thank you so much, Travis and Joel, just for your time. And we're going to go ahead and dismiss for the evening. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. I know it's been toasty, but I trust that you all have been blessed.